Took me a minute to make this build. He was highly requested. And I actually did use these weapons through my first playthrough of Shadow of the Ant-Tree. The thing is that there were so many interesting things that Shadow of the Ant-Tree was always throwing at your face that I just didn't really have the time to make a build for these weapons. But it's not that they are not good. As a matter of fact, they are some of my favorite weapon types. Well, we have lots of weapon types, and I think that this one specifically are very good. They are very powered, but also they require for a lot of swiftness on your fingers. It requires for you to be nimble. It requires for you to use your reflexes as well, more than your muscle memory. Although, yes, your muscle memory is going to be quite important. The damage, it's decent. I mean, it's a nice damage. It's a tremendous amount of damage once you build it properly. But the real star of this thing is that once you manage to learn how to use them, it is a little bit more for like I would say high skill ceiling players. But once you do learn how to use them, they are just a force to be reckoned with, because they deal so much damage and they have so much versatility on moving throughout the battlefield with so nimble speed that the enemy will never know what happened to them when you were attacking. So the stats. At least for this build specifically, this is a very stat-hungry build, because we want to take as much advantage of the Bloodlust build-up. Now, opposite to different weapons, this specifically doesn't have high damage scaling on Arcane, because it's a blood weapon. Reduvia, Lenora's Ball Blade, Mogwin Spear, most of them actually scale quite nice with Arcane. That's why you can get the hard cap to 80. This one doesn't. So this is a quality, let's say a quality plate build in between Dexterity and Arcane, because this weapon scales better with Dexterity right here. And the Arcane, the cap for Arcane, it's 55. We have it in 50 right here to have a little bit more extra cheeky points into Dexterity. But feel free to change those 55 points into Dexterity towards Arcane, which would be ideal, because you would be reaching the cap for bleeding. The rest of everything is just trying to make up for the stuff that we don't have. The strength that you see right there, that is a consequential little something of my starting class. So that is ideally not that important. As a matter of fact, the weapon requirement just requires for you to have 10. Meaning that 10 is ideally what you would have right there. And then mines. The Ashevore, it's amazing. We'll talk about that in a little while. It doesn't cost that much mines, so you can be spamming it without having that much mines. And the weapon rarely weights anything, so we don't need really that much endurance. Although endurance, it's quite important for us to have our flurry of attack. And then we have the hard cap for vigor right there to have as much survivability as possible. So for the equipment that I have right here, it's pretty straightforward as well. My backhand blade right here, this is a blood one. It has a blood affinity, and it has the Ash of War, that which we will discuss briefly in a little while. You will notice that I do have a Wakizashi right here, that it has not been improved. I have Bloodhound Step right here, since we're not using shield, and sometimes there are some very scary AoE types of attacks that the enemy has, and that they have like longer wind-ups of dodging window. Bloodhound Step is going to help alleviate that little AoE damage that you have right there. So I'd like to be swapping in between the changes very fast. You do have to, like I said, you do have to be very nimble with your fingers, but once you manage to implant your muscle memory into changing this, once you see that the enemy is throwing a weak AoE against you, then this is just a game changer right here. As for the armor, like always, nothing fancy. I'm just using something that would like some kind of like fit the playstyle. Although this isn't that much of a Japanese type of weapon. It's still, I would say that it's still like something like in between the Middle East. But at the end of the day, I'm just making my character look nice while I'm dual wielding, while I still retain that 51 points threshold. With this endurance that we have right here, and without the necessity of having any endurance or carry weight capacity talismans, we can use the Armor of Solitude, the Greaves and Gauntlets of Solitude, to bypass that 51 points threshold. It is very important that you get familiar, that you familiarize yourself with this weapon, because it can backfire against you. The window, the iframes that this weapon has, that this Ash of War has, they are very generous. They are actually quite nice, but they are not as good as a regular dodge. and usually once it can be spammed, so you can spam it. It has decent damage. I wouldn't say that it has amazing, tremendous damage, because it doesn't. It has decent damage, 1k damage per swing. It's not nothing shabby at all. Like, that's quite a bit of damage. It's not as high as some different Ashes of War, overpower Ashes of War that you have out there, and you can spam it, but you are going to be left the window that you are left open, it's bigger than if you're panic rolling. So usually you do have to learn how to use this thing, because you don't want to be caught up sometimes that the enemy is doing an attack and then it does a follow-up attack. The follow-up attack, it's more often than not going to hit you, so you have to wait for the combo of the enemy to finish, so that you can finish that combo with this thing right here, and then you can follow up with basic attacks, so it translates into more damage. So yes, this is more punishment than the regular builds and regular weapons that you have out there, but you do have to time it still. It's not something that you'll be able to spam. I have 2 Crystal Tears that I like to use with this weapon, one of them being Dexterity, not Crystal Tear, because we haven't reached the soft cap, nor the hard cap for that matter, of our Dexterity right here. So this is going to give us a little bit more damage, just a little bit. So if it's not going to be that much damage, then this can be changed, of course, to something like Green Burst Crystal Tear, like the Crimson Burst Crystal Tear, things like that, or maybe, for example, as well, the Crystal Tear that would improve your Spirit Ashes. I'm not using any kind of Spirit Ashes in this showcase that I have for you right here, just so that you can see the potential of the weapon in itself. But then my other recommendation would be, like, for example, the Upper Line Bubble Tear, or one of my personal favorites, since this is a weapon that attacks in a very fast succession, the Thorny Crack Tear. The Talismans, I wouldn't really leave you that much window to change the talismans that I'm using right here. As a matter of fact, these are the talismans that I myself personally would advise for you to use right here in this lot. The Millicent Prosthesis, the Winged Sword Insignia, the Lord of Blood Exaltation, and the Shadow of Alexander. All of these work in a perfect synergy of increasing your damage quite substantially, quite a lot. However, if you feel that you already have enough damage, but you do want to have a little bit more survivability, or a little bit more of, let's say, versatility on your talisman selection right here, you can change the Winged Sword Insignia, which this actually stacks with the Millicent Prosthesis, so I wouldn't recommend it that much. But if you feel that you don't have enough endurance, then be my guest, change this for the Turtle Talisman, or that you're taking too much damage, Dragon Crest. Overall, the regular ideal talismans that we would use as a backup this is a slot that I'd say that you can change the Winged Sword Insignia, although personally I just don't. Very fun to use, very powerful. The damage is just excellent because you have the best status ailment in the game, which is bleeding, and it procs tremendous amounts of times because these are very, very fast attacking weapons and they have huge amounts of bleeding build up. So more often than not, in just 2 single attacks, 2 single combos, that's going to be more than enough for you to be able to proc bleeding on the enemy. Consequentially, its punishes are better, but they do require more skill, so it's a high risk, high reward kind of skill, kind of thing. Sorry about that, because remember that you do have to be a skillful player, and you do need to know the combos of the enemy, especially of the bosses, to wait for that specific time when they are finishing the combo, and then you can finish that final combo attack with your Ash of War, followed by the regular attacks, either heavy or light attacks that you would use, that translates into more punishment than the regular weapons would otherwise have, because otherwise different weapons would only have just like the basic, for example, light attack or heavy attack punishments that they have at the end of the combo. This can start those light attacks or heavy attacks by using the Ash of War, and it's going to protect you because the iframes are quite generous. It's a very round weapon, and I'd say that it is one of my favorites when I'm feeling that I do need to ramp up my playstyle a little bit more. Anyways, if you like the content, like it, never super appreciate it. And also, you today you're a gorgeous and beautiful person, you're indeed a gorgeous and beautiful person. Subscribe to the channel, join the Discord, have a beautiful day, and goodbye.